Paula, come to me immediately. I need to discuss something with you. A harsh voice from the main office made Paula involuntarily jump from her work chair. If Director Ricardo Rivas called her, it meant that it was definitely not worth waiting for something good. The girl casually looked at herself in her pocket mirror, combed her hair and then, with a deep sigh, headed for the boss's office. The director of the consulting firm Rivas y Asociados, Ricardo, greeted Paula, as always, with the utmost contempt of his icy blue eyes. Ricardo Rivas was only 28 years old, but he looked even younger, all because the guy had a very delicate physique and, besides, he was the happy owner of soft, curly hair, the color of ripe, golden wheat. At the same time, Rivas had an unusually low, even scary voice, and such a contrast that when many met him for the first time, it gave them a natural culture shock. Ricardo Rivas always dressed impeccably, as if every day he represented the interests of his company in front of the president himself. Some employees even suspected that part of his salaries, so unexpectedly economized earlier this year, were just for that. So that his director could fashionably update his business suit closet. Ricardo frankly hated Paula, no kidding, because this upstart, about 6 months ago, worked in his office as a common cleaning lady. In fact, Paula was a unique case in which a person who had risen from the bottom was able to reach the rank immediately to the deputy director. However, according to Augusto Duenas himself, the former director, whose place he had recently taken, he had made a monstrous mistake in hiring a mere peasant for such a responsible position. "It's okay, I will definitely correct this miscalculation. I'm not even going to wait until the end of the week," thought the new director to himself, and at that moment he looked at his young partner with honest disdain. "Good afternoon, Ricardo Rivas," began Paula timidly, carefully closing the door behind her. "Did you call me?" "Yes, I called her," smiled the director. "Tell me, Maria, do you know that in 5 days we will have very important negotiations with Freund Industries? And what, does it depend on these negotiations if you can continue being a partner of this company?" "Yes, I heard," said the girl quietly, tilting her head. Of course, she knew about these negotiations. Everyone in the company knew that Freund Industries would never agree to a deal with a company as medium-sized as her company Rivas y Asociados. And yet, her boss seemed to have deliberately gone out of his way to invite negotiations representing this serious brand. Although Paula, like Ricardo Rivas, was well aware that these negotiations would probably fail. Augusto Duenas has spoken of you as a brilliant economist with amazing diplomatic skills. Narrowing his eyes, the director continued. Therefore, on my part, it would be an extremely incompetent step not to give you the opportunity to prove yourself in such an important matter as. What a thing, you will actually save the whole company with your actions. The last sentence, Ricardo Rivas, delivered with especially mock drama. He seemed to enjoy the way he gracefully humiliated his unfortunate employee. Paula understood where he was leading, and this made her even more anxious. Mr. Ricardo, I apologize, but it seems to me that we had already discussed this situation last month. I do not have the authority to conduct negotiations as important as these without your presence. That would be pure disrespect to the staff of Freund Industries. Furthermore, in the last report, I presented to you all options for the development of the situation, with possible cooperation with them as partners. With all due respect, Mr. Ricardo Rivas, but this is too risky. In case of failure, all the assets of Rivas y Asociados may suffer and we cannot allow this to happen. We already lost 20% of the shares in the market in July, remember? Paula tried to reason with the director with all kindness and courtesy, although she understood that a person like Ricardo Rivas would hardly be impressed with such exhortations. So it was, the boss remained motionless while the girl explained the situation, and literally pierced her with his eyes, looking for the slightest miscalculation in every word. Don't tell me, Paula Montano, where I should take risks and where I shouldn't. The director suddenly burst out. Believe me, I have a very good idea of how things stand with our shares and that part of the assets, which, by the way, yes, you don't have to look at me like that. It's you who is to blame, Paula Montano, you blew it. Paula looked at Ricardo Rivas with round eyes of astonishment. Never, not even in her worst dream, could she have imagined that she would be reproached for the fall of financial stability within the company, which she had literally been rocking in her hands all this time. Looking only for the most profitable and long-term contracts. The director's statement took the girl by surprise. "I'm sorry, Mr. Rivas, but you are fundamentally wrong here. That incident happened solely because of..." Paula stumbled, and the director approached her with a long, brusque step. Well, finish talking, Paulita," scoffed the director. "Then whose fault was it?" The associate quickly looked her boss in the face and immediately bit her tongue. No matter how much she would like to express everything she thinks to this young hallucinator, as soon as she utters a word, everything she just calms her down. Her way of life will instantly come to an end. Paula just took a deep breath and said aloud, "The incident occurred solely due to external economic circumstances that are not under our control in any way." The director smiled in satisfaction, but his eyes still remained cold and angry. "Well done, Paulita. You stopped in time, thank you. In general, I have the following order for you. On Friday, hold final negotiations with Freud Industries, and, if they prove successful, you will remain working in the company as before. Maybe I will even give you a raise. Well, let's say, about 5,000, no more. You yourself say that we are now in financial difficulties, so it is very important to economize on everything. And yes, if the negotiations do not go as planned, then what happens?" The girl decided to ask him a bold but dangerous question. Ricardo Rivas sat on a chair and crossed his arms like a king, looking thoughtfully at his subject. "Well, if suddenly the deal fails, you can consider that from this moment begins a long vacation. Unpaid." Paula swallowed saliva before clarifying. "In other words, will you fire me?" "The talk is over. Sorry, Paulita, I have other things to do." The firm's director pretended to be extremely interested in some figures in her papers, so Paula had no choice but to return to her office and cry bitterly. The girl was dejected and did not know at all what to do. Then of course she would go to that so-called business meeting. However, with the same success, she could personally sign the letter of resignation, thus facilitating the task of the shameless director. Returning home from work that evening, Paula unwittingly immersed herself in her own memories. The girl had something to think about. Besides, the way to the bus stop from her office was not close. It's time to think about the past, to try to find in it hints of what might later be her future. Paula grew up in a very poor family. Her parents, Veronica de Montano and Jose Montano, unfortunately, were acute alcoholics and drank, as they say, non-stop. Not a day went by without Paula pulling out whole bags full of empty bottles from her parents. The little girl sorted them carefully and then delivered them to the recycling point. This, and helping her own mother with house cleaning, helped little Paula at least have some money in her pocket with which she could occasionally buy lunch in the school cafeteria, or set aside to buy a new sports uniform for the next school year. Due to constant malnutrition, Paula always looked painfully thin. The child had a hard time. After all, whatever free weight she gained through hard physical labor, her mother and father were always trying to take it off. Veronica de Montano didn't care so much about what to feed her daughter. She herself had enough with a piece of dry bread and an infinite bottle of alcohol at her side. The father, Jose Montano, was also good for a drink. Sometimes he would get so drunk that in the drunken frenzy he did not consider it shameful to raise his hand against his wife or daughter. Yes, he beat his mother very often, and then tried to make do with Paula. Preventive measures against laziness, as he called them, no more than a couple of times a month. Still, the girl at the time was going to school. The father of the family, Montano, did not need additional problems. Paula tried to endure her parents' bitter drunkenness as best she could, and still loved them. She fixed up their ramshackle one-room apartment when her parents went out drinking with friends, or tried to cook more or less dinner at least decent. Basically, it was some soups made with cheap macaroni, and a snack like potato chips. The girl entrusted the washing of all the clothes, at her own risk, to an old washing machine, which every time the girl tried to start it, it buzzed and rumbled horribly. The strangest thing was that Paula could not remember a single day in her life when her parents were not drunk. She seemed to have been born into a family of alcoholics, and had been from her earliest childhood. Even the girl's earliest memory was overshadowed by the smell of alcohol and her father's anger, when he, in a drunken fit of rage, broke her beloved stuffed bunny in front of her. Just because Paula upset him in some way. Few people knew that Paula was very concerned about her family. Even when the girl was only 7 years old, she already understood that the way her family lived was not the norm in a decent society. Paula, go on then, go take out the garbage, it stinks so much it can't stand it. At the same time go to the store, buy your father a drink, if you have the money. Do you have any? Why yes, you little rascal, I know you probably do. Jose Montano smiled with his teeth yellowed by long years of tobacco and alcohol consumption, and jokingly shook his daughter with his index finger. Dad, I'm still small, you know they won't sell me vodka. Answered the frightened Paulita, trying with all her might to hold back her sliding tears. But what to do with the girl? Of course, in a second, she already began to sob softly under the threatening gaze of her father. Yes, I'll whip you with the girth. You'll behave, insolent. The man tried to scare her, but he himself could not even take a normal step. He was swaying all the time, as if he were on the deck of a ship. Paula, this is. Come on, do what your father says, don't make him or me angry. Repeated his wife Veronica tongue-tied. All the bastards in that store already know you, ask them for a drink, tell them that your mother and father are hydrating themselves. They'll soon understand what's going on. Here's 100 pesos, it should be enough. The mother barely pulled out a crumpled bill from the pocket of her greasy apron, after which she tried to hug the girl, only spraying her with strong alcohol vapors. Mommy, I love you so much. Please stop drinking with my daddy, huh? He said every time his daughter begged the woman. Do other children somehow live with parents who do not drink? Why are we worse off? Veronica de Montano immediately pushed the girl with trembling, helpless hands, as if she were a mangy puppy. Go on, get out. There's nothing to deal with here. She spoke rudely. It hurts, too small to preach to your mother about the right life. You want parents who do not drink? Your mother and father did not like you? You bastard? The woman turned to punch the girl in the face, but each time Paula managed to dodge in such a way that her drunken mother's palm invariably met the air. I feed you, I dress you, I carry heavy buckets, I wash other people's spittle every day to feed you. Aren't you sorry you don't even want to bring me a bottle of vodka? Ungrateful. Veronica looked at Paula as if she did not see in her beloved daughter, but a completely strange child whom she had to support day after day, but who had absolutely nothing to do with her as a mother. Why are you doing this to me? What did I do wrong to you? Paula asked in tears, and she herself tried to put on the jacket, torn in several places, and the low shoes tightened with ribbons as quickly as possible, the only ones she, without taking them off, always wore on the street in any weather for more than a year. Occasionally, however, when the mother came to herself, even for a short time, she would always apologize to Paulita and call herself a monster. After that, they would usually go to a second-hand clothing store, where Veronica de Montano would buy clothes for her daughter. Usually the cheapest, often stretched at the sleeves and knees, turtlenecks and pants. However, Paula was glad even for this. At such moments, her mother was as healthy as possible, and every time she swore that this was happening to her for the last time, and that from tomorrow they will surely start anew, completely sober and happy life. Paula always believed, she wanted to believe that her mother could still change, and that this endless drunkenness would finally stop. Maybe someday they would even be able to celebrate her birthday, for real, in a cafe where they would serve ice cream and sweet refreshments. It's natural for a child to dream, but if other children her age dreamed of a new doll or construction set, then Paula was dreaming of an immediate and final recovery for her family. And then, in the evening, Jose Montano, eternally drunk, came home from work. He worked part-time as a bulk loader, then as a security guard at a local bar, and it started all over again. He also yelled at Paula for trying to defend her mother's right to be sober and sane. Veronica de Montano usually had enough stamina for several long, exhausting hours, during which she sobbed incessantly and complained to her daughter about her difficult fate. From her fragmented memories, the girl concluded that before the birth of herself, her family lived quite well, not rich, of course, but not poor either. One fatal event changed everything. Jose Montano invested in expensive stocks guaranteed by his apartment, and he and his wife lost absolutely everything. Soon after, a crisis broke out in the country and the spouses also became unemployed. It turned out that the father worked as an engineer in an industrial company and the mother worked as a clothes saleswoman in a goods store. The crisis took away the last thing they had, so the only thing left was to surrender to the will of fate and start begging. At first, the family still somehow tried to hold on. The Montanos drank only on weekends at first, and then there was only enough money for the cheapest drinks. At that time, Jose Montano's father, Paula's grandfather, had already died, so he, his wife and their newborn daughter moved into the same cazuela where they live to this day. From that moment on, their slow journey into the abyss began. Wherever the unfortunate spouses managed to establish themselves, they were cheated everywhere or tried to cheat them out of money. Because of this, on the way out, instead of a salary, the Montanos had mere pennies, which more and more often remained behind the counter, first beer and then things to go with the alcohol. Veronica de Montano cared less and less about her daughter, and soon lost all interest in her. Therefore, the girl considered the rare moments of awakening in the mother of human consciousness as a real miracle. At school, Paula also had a hard time. She remembered forever the scornful looks from classmates who tripped her up and called her nothing more than the drunk's daughter. Because of the way she dressed, and also because all her clothes reeked of alcohol and wine, teachers often sent her home much earlier than expected. They did not want to solve the problems that were a heavy burden on the shoulders of a girl, so it was easier to just ignore them, accusing Paula of carelessness and forbidding her to be in the same class with normal children. In those moments, Paula literally wanted to sink to the floor from shame and the feeling of her own helplessness. After all, no matter how carefully she washed her old blouses, and no matter how many times she sprayed her shoes with the cheapest air freshener, it seemed to the girl that the smell of alcohol would now haunt her forever, as if he bit her scent, Paula herself. Neighbors, seeing the unfortunate girl suffering, finally decided to call social services authorities to the Montano home. Roxana Vasquez, a kind-hearted woman who sometimes took Paula home for the night when her father and mother were on a particularly violent bender with their drinking buddies, sheltered the girl in her home for the duration of the trial. A case was initiated against Veronica de Montano and Jose de Montano under the Child Welfare Act for negligent treatment of a minor child and refusal to perform direct parental duties. The couple behaved aggressively in the courtroom, refused to admit guilt, and said their daughter never complained of any negligent treatment. The middle-aged judge immediately understood what was going on and, as a result of the case, the Montanos were forcibly deprived of custody of their daughter. At first, Paula's mother cried for a long time, but then she calmed down and told Paula that it was probably even better this way. Now there would be someone to take care of her. The girl did not expect such a reaction in any way, but she remembered very well how painful it was for her the moment when her own mother abandoned her to continue with her lifestyle, to be a drunk forever. Jose Montano, in turn, did not even look at his daughter. It seemed completely incomprehensible to him why they were kept in custody for so long, only to finally announce that now it would be easier for them to live. Then, 12-year-old Paula unexpectedly ended up in an orphanage, where she had to relearn the laws of survival in a difficult society, made up of completely uncontrollable and misguided teenagers. At first, Paula had a very hard time at the orphanage, the unsociable and sad girl, all the time striving to hurt and offend the older and more ill-mannered boys. Having found out which family Paula was from, the orphans began to behave almost the same as the girl's previous classmates, with the only difference being that at every opportunity these little slackers tried to pinch or push the poor thing. Paula often hid in a toilet to cry as much as she wanted there and think about what she should have done. The girl had no doubt that, if she allowed herself to use retaliatory aggression against the boys, she would eventually become like them, or worse, like her own parents. Paula did not want to go running so much because she would subsequently lose her ultimate dreams in life. Therefore, after careful thought about her destiny, she decided to devote herself to her studies. Only having learned and received a good and respected profession, Paula will be able to take a worthy place in society and live the way she wants to, and not the way the increasingly depressing circumstances around her dictate. The girl firmly promised herself that she would not let weakness and fear take hold of her, and would never become a reflection of those people who once gave her life, but at the same time, forever took away from this life the brightest part, childhood. With such thoughts, young Polita began to study zealously. She read all the books given to her by her educators and teachers, completed all the assignments, and this helped her to achieve quite good grades in a short time, which pleased and cheered the poor girl. In the same period, Paula met one of the teachers of the orphanage, Amelia Portillo. The woman had no children and, therefore, decided to dedicate her whole life to the children who were left without family, trying every day to give them love, affection, and transmit all the knowledge necessary for adult life. Amelia Portillo became for Paula, one could say, a second mother, only a real one, who cares about what she was wearing and if she ate today. Amelia Portillo never cursed any of her students. If sometimes out of the ordinary situations happened, then she would try to conduct a conciliatory conversation with that child or teenager, during which she would try to understand what moved the child at the moment he or she committed a bad action. Probably, this is also the reason why Amelia Portillo was immensely respected and loved by all the boys in the orphanage, so they tried not to bother the woman with nonsense. The first thing the teacher did was to throw away and then burn all the clothes Paula came to her orphanage with. At first, the girl was very frightened. After all, they wanted to take away her only and most expensive thing, what she was wearing. Well, don't be afraid, silly, Amelia Portillo tried to reason with her. I'm taking your clothes exclusively for sanitary purposes. It's not good for such a good and pretty girl to walk around in those rags, and even smelling of alcohol from head to toe. Come on, I'll take them off, you'll have a bath, and then we'll give you another set of clothes, clean and tidy, so that you'll be happy to wear them yourself. Do you have clothes in my size? Paula asked in surprise. I thought you were all taking care of what your relatives gave you, or what good people give you. The teacher smiled kindly. Not only in this. Of course, some donate to us from charity funds, and someone maybe left clothes here in the past, but mostly. We have our own warehouse, or we have new things, a kind of emergency supply for girls like you. Have something to change into when they come here to live. And, of course, you'll have your own separate shelf with things where you can put all your new clothes. There, of course, there won't be as many of these clothes there, but I guarantee that all the things are clean and no one has worn them before you. Okay? Paula smiled gratefully in response. During her 12 years, no one had ever spoken kinder words to her than this strange woman. The girl agreed to hand over her worn rags, after which she was given a set of new, clean clothes, a skirt, stockings, a pair of t-shirts, a long-sleeved blouse, underwear, and pajamas, as well as 2 pairs of small cloth shoes. Low ballerina-like shoes and autumn boots with high laces. Paula then thought she had fallen into heaven. She had never had such beautiful and complete clothes. Her pajamas were especially striking, flannel pants and a long-sleeved button-down shirt, decorated with a cheerful print in the shape of little yellow chickens. What a beauty! He said with admiration. That's how nice it is, murmured Amelia Portillo good-naturedly, but for some reason she herself was blushing. But I'm glad you liked your new closet so much, really. The woman was a little embarrassed. She did not expect the girl to have such a distorted perception of reality, where the most common flannel pajamas and full, not torn, stockings could cause such unprecedented delight. Mentally, Amelia Portillo wondered if her parents ever realized that they had a daughter at home. And so, Paula found a true friend and mentor in the person of the teacher, and it became much easier for her to live in the orphanage. Now, every morning, she had a hot breakfast, a full lunch with dinner, and even a glass of atoll in the evening waiting for her in the common dining room. What can we say about the fact that sometimes packages with sweets from the same volunteer organizations were brought to her orphanage? Only at the age of 12, Paula experienced for the first time what chocolate and nougat, like a cloud, candy and marshmallows, tasted like. At the same time, Paula did not forget about her studies. Amelia Portillo noticed early on that the girl was surprisingly good at mathematics. After having several individual lessons with her, the teacher came to the conclusion that Paula had excellent innate abilities for mathematical analysis and complex calculations. She, of course, told the girl about this and advised her to continue her studies not only in accordance with the school curriculum, but also with the help of additional classes and special literature that would help her to pass the final school exams well, and at the same time become a good base to prepare for university entrance. Amelia Portillo and Paula agreed that she would go to her 3 times a week for additional lessons. The woman wanted to develop the girl's innate talent, while instilling confidence in her own abilities. The fact is that Amelia herself in the past worked as a math teacher in high school. She also knew how to calculate large numbers in her mind, so she knew the material well and could help Paula to prepare properly for all tests. The girl began to work with maximum efficiency, applying all her strength and putting her own soul into every equation solved. Soon, as Amelia Portillo hoped, Paula could easily calculate more complex integrals and thus also cope with the final exam tests. The student did not disappoint her mentor. After graduating from school with a gold medal, Paula entered a prestigious university the same year, beating an extraordinary competition of several people for a place. Having obtained a scholarship, Paula rejoiced in a way that, probably, she had never rejoiced in her life. For her excellent results and other successes, it meant admission to a full-time department in a university. She had been given a good room in the orphanage, and the girl could not live in the student hostel, coming to the university only for classes. The first semester turned Paula into a local celebrity. Teachers in their careers do not remember seeing such high results from students for quite some time. The girl was awarded a larger scholarship, and only then, she finally realized that she had begun to live independently, and at the same time completely wonderful life, which she so desperately dreamed about all her difficult childhood. Paula was afraid even to think how lucky she was that, next to her, at one moment, there were such wonderful people as Amelia Portillo and a neighbor on the landing, who later called the police. Perhaps, if it were not for them, it would not now be known at all how the girl's fate unfolded. Then Paula could only silently rejoice in her happiness and try not to think about her parents who traded her for a bottle of vodka or wine. In her last year of college, Paula met the love of her life. Once, when the girl had a big 2-hour window between couples, Paula went to the local park, which was especially popular with the students. The tree planting and general landscaping were designed in such a way that they resembled a real college campus from some Hollywood movie. Young people often held picnics there and so-called campfire gatherings, so at any time of the day there were always a lot of people in the park, and it was never scary to sit there with a book, or just drink coffee while sitting on a comfortable and elegant bench. Paula chose to study a tall oak tree with a spreading green canopy, beneath which a small well-kept lawn was delicately placed, a freshly mowed lawn. Paula spread under her feet an old bath towel, which for these purposes she carried in her backpack, and sat down on it, taking at the same time a book out of her bag. The girl hoped to read something for the soul and then return to the main building. She had one more English class and could go home. Opening the book, she was instantly immersed in the fascinating plot. It was a critically acclaimed foreign detective story, very much in vogue, when suddenly a pleasant voice called her name. "Paula?" asked the voice. "Paula, excuse me, are you free here?" Paula did not come back to reality immediately. For several seconds she tried unsuccessfully to concentrate on the sound and where it was coming from. Finally, she saw before her a tall, pleasant-looking young man. The boy was not much older than she was, and he smiled cheerfully at the girl. "Eh? Excuse me, what? Is that what you told me?" Paula fluttered her eyelashes in confusion. "Yes, I asked him. Can I sit next to you on the other side of the tree? This is a very good place to read, and the sun doesn't hit my eyes." Paula was at first confused, then breathed a sigh of relief. Of course you can. This is a public place and a common tree. I think you will not tell anyone that 2 people were sitting under it at once." The boy laughed at the girl's awkward joke and introduced himself, shaking Paula's hand. "I am Miguel. Miguel Aquino. We are studying in the same course, just in different groups. Forgive my curiosity, but I've heard so much about your amazing skills in mathematical analysis that I couldn't help but approach you and try to get to know you." "Very kind, Miguel," she replied politely, responding to his handshake. "And I, Paula Montano, and I am completely unaware of the rumors about me at the university. And immediately you can tell me we are learning in the same faculty, why this pathos?" Miguel smiled again, and Paula noticed that the boy sighed softly, as if he was afraid to approach her, expecting anything but ordinary human communication. The girl also felt her heart racing. Miguel was a very nice young man and an excellent conversationalist. While sitting under the tree, they had time to discuss many interesting things, from the quality of certain brands' board games to the new episode of this summer's most anticipated series. The two young students turned out to have very similar interests, and Paula was incredibly happy to talk to a man who was in the same sync as her. The friendship that followed quickly turned into a giddy and tender romance, and the young people could not spend a single day without each other. For the first time, Paula felt that next to Miguel she could be a real girl, helpless and vulnerable, the kind you want to protect from the darkness of the harsh world, and whose love young men dream of keeping for life. Miguel was just as crazy, if not more so, about Paula. The boy promised her that they would get married as soon as they both graduated from college. They think there is no point in waiting any longer, and it is very clear that they are made for each other. The only obstacle that overshadowed the joy of the young people for the future marriage was the behavior of the parents of the beloved Paula. As it turned out, Miguel came from a very wealthy and respected family. The young man's parents were well-known businessmen who specialized in the sale of construction materials. Naturally, Mr. and Mrs. Aquino could not even imagine that a simple girl from an orphanage would be the wife of their beloved son. About her past and about her parents, Paula asked the groom not to tell her future in-laws. She thought this would definitely not add extra points to her reputation, but may make the situation even more tense. However, Rafael Aquino and Margarita de Aquino somehow found out about the pedigree of the prospective daughter-in-law, and this, of course, completely infuriated them. "This wedding will not happen." The groom's father was furious. "Do you even know that your daughter-in-law is from a family of alcoholics? Is that a potential ticking time bomb that will sleep in the same bed with you? What are you talking about, father?" "Yes, Paula didn't want to tell you about her difficult childhood, poor thing. She has experienced so many things in her life that you can't imagine." Miguel tried to protect his beloved. "Of course I can't imagine," replied Margarita de Aquino. "We, with Rafael, thank God, don't roll around drunk on the sidewalks." "Mother! Stop insulting my fiancé!" The son exploded. "No, your mother says everything correctly." The father spoke again. "You, Miguelito, at least think for a minute, what kind of children, with such genetics, can you have? Do you realize?" Miguel shook his chin stubbornly. "Don't even try. You won't convince me to marry Paula anyway. As soon as we get the diplomas, we will immediately send an application to the marriage registration office." Mr. and Mrs. Aquino were extremely astonished by their poor son's perseverance. As much as they tried to convince him afterwards, or to denigrate his future wife in front of him, they did not succeed at all. The young men successfully graduated from college, defended their theses, after which, happy, they began to prepare for the wedding with strength and mettle. Miguel's parents had no choice but to accept their son's choice and give him the right to decide on the issue of his happiness in choosing a family. Paula and Miguel were driving on a wet autumn road, slippery after a heavy downpour the night before. Paula needed to revisit the studio, where, time and again, she went through the fitting of her future wedding dress. The groom allowed the girl to order a fashionable, designer dress, so her preparation was fraught with some inconveniences. In particular, due to the large number of orders, the designer could not go to Paula's house all the time, so she had to visit the studio herself, relying on the understanding of her beloved groom. Miguel was not reluctant to help his future wife, so this time they were also in a hurry to have time to go through the procedure of trying on and fitting the dress before lunch. They still had to have time to discuss the details of the gala dinner at the restaurant, and the chef could only show up once a day, between 1 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. In general, the couple's schedule was very busy and tight, so Miguel increased the speed a little, eager to cross the road as fast as possible and finally be in the city. Everything happened at an incredible speed, but Paula saw what was happening, as if in slow motion. Here it happens that the car slips into a dangerous turn and the wheels spin at an unnatural angle with a loud screech. Then Miguel is trying with all his might to hold the steering wheel, but he doesn't succeed, and the car is thrown somewhere beyond the roadside fence. It was everything around the girl begins to spin, as if she was in some kind of infernal barrel. The top and bottom suddenly changed places, and the shards of glass from the window panes stuck in her face with force, like thousands of small sharp needles. After that, Paula felt a resounding blow on her head and plunged into total darkness. The girl woke up in the hospital room. When the nurse asked her what had happened, Paula heard a dry monosyllabic answer: accident. Your fiancé is in a coma. When he will come out, and if he will come out, we don't know yet. Let's hope for the best that it will be later, as God wills. Later, when an investigator from the local police department approached her, it turned out that her and Miguel's car had lost control on a wet road. Her fiancé had numerous fractures, but what was much worse, he was severely injured in the head, so that he fell into a deep coma. Paula herself was fastened to the passenger seat with a seatbelt, so she didn't suffer as much. She escaped with only a couple of bruises, a sprain and some abrasions. When she was discharged, the girl first went to the living room with her fiancé, but there she met Miguel's parents, somber, like storm clouds. Girl, wait a minute, where are you going? Don Rafael Aquino looked at her seriously, while blocking the way. Nobody is waiting for you here. What? Wait, it's me, Paula, your son's fiancé. I understand how difficult this is for you right now, but Miguel and I were driving together and we also had this accident together. I have a right to know how he's doing and what the doctors are saying about his condition. Paula raised her chin boldly. She had involuntarily learned this gesture from her fiancé. No, Rafael, look how shameless, huh? Margarita de Aquino hissed at the girl. You have the right, you have the right. You have no right at all. And you no longer have a fiancé. If it weren't for you and your damn dress, none of this would have happened. Our Miguelito would live now and enjoy life. Margarita de Aquino sobbed softly and hid her face in her husband's chest. Paula, I beg you, go away, asked Rafael Aquino calmly. Don't you see that it is not easy for us now? Our son, your ex-fiancé, is now in a coma, and we all understand perfectly well that this happened because of you. Please leave us in our little family circle for at least a while. Maybe if when Miguel comes to his senses, he will want to talk to you, but for now, it all seems more than useless. Leave us, please. Reluctantly, Paula obeyed the will of Miguel's father. One way or another, she really could do nothing at this point. All that was left was to wait for her beloved fiancé to come to. Of course, she understood how difficult it was for her family now, but she was sincerely offended by this attitude of Rafael Aquino and Margarita de Aquino towards her. It seems that they could not accept their son's choice until the end. The next few weeks Paula spent in her modest room, pacing from corner to corner like a tiger locked in a cage. The girl was ready to break free at any moment, to run to her lover, but each time she was stopped by the fear that, on the threshold of the room, her parents might meet her again. Finally, unable to bear it, even so, she went to the hospital. However, instead of going first to the head doctor, Paula went straight to the ward where her future husband lay. The room, to the girl's surprise, was empty. Turning around, she saw Miguel's mother in front of her. The poor woman was pale as death itself, and a black woolen shawl covered her head. Mrs. Margarita de Aquino. What? Satisfied now, you bastard? Without greeting, the woman spits venom in his face. You ruined my son, you bastard. What happened? Paula asked in surprise. I don't understand anything. Where is Miguel? Where is Miga? Miga? Our Miga is dead. And all thanks to you. You're a pest. I'd rather have strangled you. Paula felt the floor sway beneath her. Her arms and legs immediately became cold, indicating to her that her blood pressure had dropped dramatically. What did you say? She whispered. Miga. Did he die? Don't even think about coming to the funeral, bitch. Mrs. Aquino warned her. If you come within a mile of us, I'll order the bodyguards to shoot you like a rabid dog. Understood? Get out. Get out of here. Don't let my eyes see you. Paula did not want to get into an argument with the grief-stricken woman, but only walked slowly toward the exit. She never had the opportunity to attend the funeral of the person closest to her. Miguel's parents not only did not invite the young woman, but also seriously hinted that an unfortunate fate would await her if she dared to watch the sad procession from afar. Paula spent the next few days in severe depression. She could not eat, drink, and suffered from constant nausea, which, as it soon became clear, had nothing to do with the tragic events in the girl's life. Having bought a pregnancy test at the nearest pharmacy, Paula received a positive result. The girl was both happy and frightened. How will she raise a child alone? How can she survive this pregnancy, and what kind of mother can she become, given her sad story? All these questions tormented the girl with terrible force. Sometime later, Paula visited the hospital, where an ultrasound showed that in 8 months she would give birth to healthy twins. This fact puzzled her even more. Now she urgently needed to look for work and somehow support herself first during pregnancy and then for the newborn children. The funds she and Miguel saved for the wedding were barely enough to survive the winter, and what will happen in the future was unknown. Paula knew one thing for sure: it was necessary to leave this city as soon as possible, so that the parents of the deceased groom, God forbid, they will not find out about his situation and, subsequently, will not send their children to Miga. Having hurriedly packed her bags, the girl bought a ticket to the bus station and that same night left for another city, fearing possible persecution by the Aquino family. With the last of her money, Paula managed to rent a decent apartment, which she paid for in half with her neighbor, Barbara. Barbara was a laughing, good-natured girl, with whom Paula could easily find a common language. She told her story, after which Barbara only respected Paula more. "Yes, my friend." She shook her head thoughtfully. "I don't even know what I would do in your place. The strength of spirit you have, of course, oh, God protect us all. Don't worry, I'll always help you in any way I can, that's a cross." The girl quickly half-crossed herself 3 times. "You are not alone, Paula. And together, you and I will raise your children and somehow make a life." Paula was grateful to Barbara for her kindness and understanding, so for her part she tried to endure and not to disturb her with doubts, which, from time to time, arose in her restless soul. Thus, imperceptibly, almost a year flew by. Paula safely gave birth to twins, whom she named Luis and Andres. Barbara helped her neighbor with the children literally in everything. She took care of them, changed with Paula at night when she was very tired, and was practically a second mother for them. A little later, when Paula recovered after giving birth again, started working 7 days a week, collecting all the side jobs she could, Barbara took care of the twins in her absence, without expressing any discomfort. Paula's friend worked remotely as an editor for a news channel and only had to come to the office a couple of times a month. She received a fairly decent salary for her work, so the role of nanny for her friend's children did not burden her at all. In addition, Barbara understood perfectly what it was like to be a single mother with 2 children and not being able to really see them. Barbara's mother also raised her with her sister without a father and without any support, so when one of the daughters had the opportunity to help her mother in material and housing terms, she did not hesitate for a minute, and went to another city to earn money. Paula actually saw her young children only twice a day, early in the morning, before going to work, and late at night, after returning from her shift. The girl did not shy away from any job. She washed floors in offices and shopping malls, was hired as a dishwasher in small cafes and canteens, and even tried to become a financial counselor in the local city forum. All this gave her something, though not a lot of money, but it allowed her to support herself and her children, and the last thing on Paula's list of priorities always came first. Paula was incredibly grateful to Barbara for her help in caring for the twins, but as soon as they grew up, she immediately put them in a small kindergarten located in the area of her colony. No one wanted to see a young mother with 2 children in her arms in the role of an economist. All Paula's attempts to get a more or less decent job in her specialty invariably ended in complete failure. Employers would ask her the same question, and when they found out about the twins, who were not yet even 3 years old, they would immediately point her to the door. After trying this way for about a month, Paula resigned herself and decided to get a job as a cleaning lady in a commercial company, so she ended up at the consulting firm Duarte y Asociados. They hired her there without any problem, as they still had to look for cleaning ladies who did their job well, and the former employee had just retired this year, so Paula became a convenient and reliable option for them. The girl herself set her sights on the sales department of this company. Paula really hoped that in time she could get a managerial position there. At first, none of the company's employees took the quiet but polite cleaning girl very seriously. Paula came to the office every day, washed the floor, vacuumed the carpet, cleaned the office equipment, and picked up and threw away all kinds of paper trash. In a word, she did not impress even a person who understands at least something in economics. However, everything was decided by chance. One afternoon, when most of the employees had already left their jobs, Paula noticed a quarterly report on the chief manager's desk. There were a lot of numbers and all kinds of calculations. Looking at them, Paula immediately realized that a serious error had crept into the documents, which meant that the Duarte and Associates was doomed to great financial losses. Paula carefully took off her rubber gloves and picked up the documents from the table. At the same time, she took a pen with her and, together with all these belongings, headed for the director's office. Luckily, he was still there too, sorting through reports from other departments. "Oh, Paulita, what are you doing here?" The man was genuinely surprised. "I thought you washed everything to a shine and went back to your children." Augusto Duenas was by nature a very kind and decent person. Paula was very impressed that he treated everyone in the office equally, whether it was the chief manager or a simple cleaning lady. He spoke to everyone in a respectful manner and never showed the importance of his economic status, serving exclusively the interests of the company, and not his own enrichment. "Forgive me, Don Augusto. I saw a very serious error in the director's calculations and, in general, I decided that you should take a look at it. I think I even know how to fix it." The director frowned. "And you, what do you know about these things? You studied, huh? 5 years in economics, with honors." Smiling shyly, Paula replied. Augusto Duenas' eyebrows shot up in surprise. Well, if this is the case, let's see what happens." From that moment on, the director noticed in the modest cleaning lady not only a diligent employee of the cleaning department, but also a brilliant economist, capable of solving the most complex tasks, sometimes not susceptible to external analysis. Duenas consulted with Paula several more times on some financial matters, and then, one day, she called her unexpectedly in the middle of a working day. The girl was at a loss. What could have happened to cause her to be called so abruptly to the director's room? She definitely remembered that since the evening she had left the office immaculately clean. On her shifts the rooms were always in perfect order. There was simply nothing to criticize her for. Augusto Duenas, having called the girl that day, was thinking about something completely different. He had long noticed an executive and a staunch employee in this slim cleaning girl, so he was sure that his unusual proposal would not only not embarrass her, but, on the contrary, inspire in a girl an unprecedented charge of optimism and motivation. But it was worth talking about it carefully, so as not to scare off such an interesting promise ahead of time. "Come in, Paula, don't be afraid. Have a seat." He pointed to the director from the chair. The girl sat shyly on the edge of an armchair. "In general, I have been watching you for a long time, Paula, and, I must say, I am very impressed by your analytical skills." Duenas started from afar. "How long have you been working for our company? More than half a year? Well, then, I've decided it's time for you to put your mops and rags in a drawer away from you, and move on to work, shall we say, more intellectually." Paula did not understand what the director was referring to. She was even afraid to move. Then Augusto Duenas did not beat around the bush, but immediately blurted out the soup. "I, Paula, want to make you the head of the sales department, i.e., assistant manager. Don't think about it, that this offer is honest and decent, You helped me more than once and I think I would never find a better candidate. Well, do you agree? Paula, of course, was taken by surprise by such a proposal from the director of Duarte y Asociados. She couldn't even think of becoming general manager or assistant manager so immediately. But still, it was a very good opportunity for her. Don Augusto, your proposal is so unexpected, began the girl softly. It's just that I cannot give a definite answer right away. I need a little time, I want to think it over. Mr. Duenas looked at Paula attentively and then answered, Okay. Well, you can think until the end of the working day, but no more. You understand me too, we have a serious business here, such important matters should not be shelved. The girl nodded and left the office. Could not find serious arguments in favor of turning down such a lucrative position. She is a single mother with 2 small children in her arms. Where else can she get a job, except as another cleaner or dishwasher? This job will bring her good money, with which she will be able to re-establish the life of her small family, and not live on bread and water, as now. As a result, Paula agreed, but was very surprised at how happy this news turned out to be for the director himself. You won't regret it, Montano. Well done. Duenas shook his hand. Thank you, I will try not to disappoint him, Paula replied, after which she modestly left the office. Augusto Duenas let her go early that night so that she could properly prepare for the new position. As he watched the girl walk away with his eyes, Duenas smiled with satisfaction. The man had no doubt that he had made the right decision. Paula Montano then became assistant director. She really liked the new job. Finally, she was able to put all her knowledge into practice, and the 5 years she spent at university paid off with 5 months of work here at Duenas y Asociados. Having set to work with enthusiasm, Paula was able to achieve excellent sales figures in record time. The bosses and other employees were very satisfied with Paula's economic strategy, so Paula didn't worry about how long she could stay in this new place. The results of her work spoke for themselves. Paula's life seemed to be slowly improving. However, the poor mother of the twins did not yet suspect that all that was happening to her would only be the beginning of the next misfortunes that would be sent to her, obviously by fate itself, to test the strength of Paula's character. The critical moment came when Augusto Duenas was suddenly removed from the position of director, putting in his place an arrogant young man, Ricardo Rivas. The guy was a distant relative of one of the company's co-founders, so he behaved like a king in the head office of Rivas y Asociados and had no qualms about wasting budget money left and right. If one of the employees insinuated to him that his actions were illegal in relation to the company, this employee was immediately fired and he hired another more suitable person in his place. Paula did not like Ricardo Rivas from the first day they met. She did not need a deputy who was well versed in finance and understood everything he wrote in the reports, trying to confuse his colleagues on the board and hide from them the huge waste of the budget company. Paula, on the other hand, more than once pointed out to him supposedly accidental errors in the numbers, and this infuriated the young man to the point of impossibility. Upon learning that the girl had moved to the position of assistant manager from the position of cleaning girl, Ricardo Rivas decided to destroy her completely. Not physically, but emotionally, he thought, and began to offend the girl in every possible way, and pointed out to her that professional resume, it was far from honest. Now, with these failed negotiations, Ricardo Rivas was finally sure that he could get rid of Paulita Montano for good, as soon as he walked through the door of the restaurant, where the representatives of Freund Industries would meet. Paula sat in her office and continued to sob bitterly. She knew very well that, by sending her to negotiations with Freund Industries, Ricardo Rivas signed the death sentence of her career with his own hand. The representatives of this company were very determined, did not want to hear any excuses, and always received an advance payment for the deal before it was confirmed by official documents. Such hard rules of this company's game were explained by their disbelief and almost maniacal selectivity in choosing their business partners. Paula almost certainly knew that she would not be able to negotiate with Freund's representatives and therefore prepared herself in advance for the fact that the next day she would have to pack all her things in a box. She would be fired, it could not be otherwise. However, the girl had to go to this meeting. The negotiations would take place in the luxury restaurant Continental, which was located in the center of the city. Businessmen from the region were coming, in their own caravan, consisting of 3 expensive foreign cars. Paula was barely recovering and ordering drinks when the doors of the restaurant opened and the whole delegation entered. The girl greeted the company representatives, inviting them to sit at the table. The prospective partners of Freund Industries emitted a plume of danger and business acumen, as if in front of Paula sat a whole pack of purebred wolves. Fortunately, despite the fact that the beginning of the negotiations turned out to be rather nervous and tense, Paula was able to provide the business partners with as much useful information about her company as possible, thanks to which the conversation reached a new, much more constructive level. The only thing that concerned Freund's representatives was the absence of one of the company's key representatives, but she had been assured that he was delayed by very important circumstances and should be joining them soon. In fact, after a while, a man appeared in the restaurant, introducing himself as one of the line managers of the partner company. However, when Paula saw the face of this handsome stranger, it seemed to her that the air in her lungs immediately ran out. Standing before her was her late fiancé, Miguel Aquino. Paula was surprised. When she first heard the last name, she didn't even give the striking resemblance a second thought. Now, everything fits. Judging by Miguel's astonished eyes, he also recognized his former girlfriend in Paula. After finishing the negotiations with difficulty and waiting for the partners to take care of their business, by the way, the deal was carried out with the maximum benefit for both parties. The young men first embraced each other reverently and then began a very difficult conversation for them. "Paula, dear, why did you leave? Why did you leave me?" Miguel asked with bitterness in his voice. "I didn't leave you," Paula replied sadly. "Your parents told me you died. They even forbade me to appear at the funeral." Paula could not stand it, and bursting into tears, she covered her face with her hands from the curious visitors of the restaurant. "God, what a black and vile lie!" the man exclaimed angrily, and then gently embraced Paula by the shoulders. "If you let me, I'll never let you go anywhere again." Paula was only enough to nod to Miguel, still trying to cope with a shower of bitter tears. It was too much even for her, as if the girl's own heart had suddenly been ripped out and put back together again, revealing to the world all those seams that still connected its broken parts to each other. It turned out that Miguel's parents lied to him, swore to him that his girlfriend was a traitor and slandered her in front of a man who had barely recovered from a severe coma. Mr. and Mrs. Aquino told him that Paula left him for a much more promising boyfriend, and he, a young fool, believed it. After that, however, they sought a bride for their son, who, in their opinion, met all the requirements of their elite family, but nothing serious came of that marriage, and the young men soon divorced. Now the young man is free and has the right to manage his own life as he sees fit. It is difficult to describe all the feelings they experienced at the moment when their hearts were finally united, but one thing they knew for sure: now nothing will be able to separate them. Paula told Miguel that his children were waiting for him at home, and Miguel, of course, although he experienced considerable surprise, at the same time was incredibly happy. "Twins? Sir, I have children," exclaimed the businessman happily, and kissed his beloved bride. She only smiled silently, because she had no words. Miguel and Paula founded their own very successful business. Immediately, upon returning from negotiations, the girl wrote a letter of resignation and left Rivas y Asociados with a glad heart, along with its greedy and elegant director. Now, Paula and her husband, the couple also got married, are raising children and doing together what they love: the production of children's furniture. As for Ricardo Rivas and his ambitions in Rivas y Asociados, shortly after Paula's dismissal, he began to suffer huge losses. In the end, the company was declared bankrupt. The thieving director was once caught bribing an important government official, and now the young entrepreneur is facing a serious prison sentence. Miguel's parents, upon seeing how happy their son became, as well as meeting his grandchildren, realized how wrong they were, that they almost deprived their son of a wonderful destiny. They apologized and were forgiven. Now the large family gathered in fraternal company for all the family festivities. If you like the story, please like and subscribe to the channel.